This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Haba, welcome everyone. Thank you everyone for coming. So, whoever's here is Ki'ilu, they're like, everyone represents more people. It's Rabin Biyad Ma'atim, you know. When it comes to Chanukah, so the few is even more chashav. I want to thank my Yedid Nefesh, Rav Moshe, for inviting me to join you tonight. It's kedai to come all the way from the 5 towns just to be able to see my good friend. And B'shus the Rav Shlita, Rav Katan. And thank you everyone for coming. So I want to share with you, we know the Chassam Sofer, aside from being one of the all-time great Gedolei Yisrael, he was one of the busiest people who ever lived. Chassam Sofer was a Rav, he was Rosh Yeshiva, he was a Paisik, he was a Meshiv. We have many Svarim from the Chassam Sofer. Of course, we have many volumes, Shalos Tshuvas Chassam Sofer. We have many editions of Chidushim, Torahs Moshe, Chidush Chassam Sofer ala Torah, Madua, Rishayna, Shniya, Tlisai, Reviyah, Drashos V'Agados. But I have a little pamphlet from the Chassam Sofer that my grandfather brought over. It's called Minhagei Chassam Sofer. It's an available sefer. It's something which is available. And in this sefer, Minhagei Chassam Sofer, there's one of the most astounding things I ever heard. Chassam Sofer writes, and actually his Talmidim, the Maram Ash, also brings down this minhag. The Chassam Sofer writes that B'Chanukah Hizir L'Sasek B'Limud Tarasena HaKadoshah Yoiser Mi B'Shar Hayamim. The Chassam Sofer warns, so to speak. He was ma'ir the people to learn on Chanukah more than the rest of the year. V'hikbid ma'idaz. He's very makbid on this. He says people play all kinds of ridiculous games. Chassam Sofer says it's a time for chizuk and limud Torah. Why? He says, "Tiknu lanu chazal lahidus olahalal v'halimud hu inyan gadol b'zman hazeh." Learning on Chanukah is a very big inyan. Why, says Chassam Sofer? Hafla v'fela. Ki oz nimseru soidos ha-Torah l'Moshe Rabbeinu. Because the secrets of the Torah were given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah. Hafla v'fela. The soidos ha-Torah were given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah? I mean, who are we to ask on the Chassam Sofer? But mehechi tesi, that the secrets of the Torah were given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah. What does that mean? Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai on Shavuos. He spent 40 days there. He came down Erev Shavas B'Tammuz. None of those 40 days fall out during Chanukah. He then goes up Yud Ches Tammuz. He comes down Erev Rosh Chodesh Elul. Also, I don't think Chanukah comes out at the end of Tammuz or Av, as far as I know. Then Moshe Rabbeinu went up a third time. He goes up Rosh Chodesh Elul. He comes down Yom Kippur. I'll tell you a chiddush. Chanukah doesn't come out during Elul or the beginning of Tishrei either. So Moshe Rabbeinu was up on Har Sinai 120 days. None of those days are Chanukah. Presumably the Rebbe was teaching him Kol HaTorah Kula then. So what in the world is Chassam Sofer saying? That the secrets of the Torah were nimsar to Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah? What's the makar of these words of the Chassam Sofer? That the secrets of the Torah were given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah. Another question, we're going to ask a number of questions. And maybe we'll ask 8 questions, okay? We'll have 8 questions tonight, and hopefully, the Siyata D'Shmaya will tie it all together. The Gemara in Yuma says on Daf Chav Tes, the Gemara is commenting on the Perek in Tehillim, Perek Chav Beis in Tehillim, Lam Natseach, Alayelas Hashachar Mizmar LeDavid. We know this kapitel is all about Purim. It's all about Keli Lama Azavtani. We have the pasuk Elaikai Ekra Yoimam V'Loisane V'Laila V'Loidu Miali, from which the Gemara learns out. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Chayav Adam Likras Asam Megillah V'Yoim V'Shnoisa B'Laila. So this whole parak is speaking about the Yom Tif of Purim. And it begins, Lamnatzech Ayelas HaShachar, that Esther is compared to Ayelas HaShachar, the morning star. And the Gemara asks, in Yuma Daf Chav Tesem Rabasi Lama Nimshala Esther L'Shachar. Why is Esther compared to the morning star? Says the Gemara, Ma Shachar Soif Kol HaLayla. Just like the morning is the end of the night, Just like the morning is the end of the night, says the Gemara, Af Esther Soif Kol Hanisim, Esther is the end of all the miracles. In other words, Esther is the very last miracle. The last miracle that ever happened was Purim. V'rak the Gemara, what do you mean? Purim happened between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. V'ha'ika Chanukah. Chanukah is the last miracle. Chanukah happened 200 years into Bayis Sheni. So what does it mean? Esther is the end of the Nisim. Chanukah is the end of the Nisim. Says the Gemara, Nitna Lichtaiv Ka'amrinan. We're talking about miracles that are allowed to be written down. The last miracle that's allowed to be written down is Purim. Purim is recorded in Megillas Esther. After Purim, maybe they're miracles, but they cannot be recorded. We're not allowed to record the miracle of Chanukah. It's not recorded technically in the Torah Shebachsav. Maybe you have Megillas Antiochus, but the Tanakh had already been sealed shut. It was closed. No miracles may be recorded anymore. Chanukah cannot be written in the Torah. That's what the Gemara says. Chanukah is loy nitna lichtayv. And the question is why? Why is Chanukah loy nitna lichtayv? Over the years we've already said 6 different pshatim. Why Chanukah is loy nitna lichtayv? The Bina Li'itim offers 4 pshatim chida. There are many, many interpretations why Chanukah is loy nitna lichtayv, but ein beis hamedrash b'li chidush. What is the pshat in the Gemara that Chanukah is loy nitna lichtayv? I remember when I was 11 years old, so the Rabbi asked the following question. If we get an answer to this question, we get points on some system. The question is, how many times is Chanukah mentioned in Shas, in the Mishnayos? How many times is Chanukah mentioned in the Mishnayos? The truth is, Chanukah is not mentioned directly anywhere. There is not one Mishnah in Shas that says, light this number of Neiros, light at this man, the Menorah should be in this place. There's not one, not no Masechta, there's not even a Mishnah that says one real halach about Chanukah, but there are 6 Mekayimos where Chanukah is mentioned, so to speak, Agav Orcha. Number 1, there's the Mishnah in Bikurim, that Bikurim were Mevi V'Koirei Ad Chanukah. It's interesting, on Chanukah we say the capital, Mizmar Shechan Ezra Arei Mimcha Hashem Kidili Sani. Why do we say that on Chanukah? Because it has the word Chanukas. I mean, I have to say 400 words, 200 words, so I'll just say Chanukas. The rest of the parak has nothing to do with Chanukah. Why would we say that parak? So some suggest, because since the parsha of Bikurim is, we're Mevi v'karei ad Chanukah, and what are we karei? What are we karei when we bring Bikurim? Arei mimcha Hashem kidili sani. So this is really the parsha of Bikurim that Chanukah is the deadline for Mikra Bikurim. So that's mission number 1. Mission number 2, they would send out shluchim, the mission of Rosh Hashanah, during the month of Kislev because of Chanukah. Mission number 3, a mission on Tainus, Ein Goizrin Tainus al Tzibor b'Chanukah. L'chol mafsikin, we interrupt the Tanesim b'Chanukah. Fine, there's a Mishnah Ma'id Katan about fasting, a eulogizing on Chanukah. A Mishnah on Baba Kama. Now this is the Mishnah says like this: Hiniach chenveni neiroi mi b'chutz hachenveni chayev. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'ner Chanukah pater. So what halacha do we have about ner Chanukah? If you're a blacksmith and you leave the candle outside, you're pater. So the Glatstein Rebbe has a tshuva. Shas tshuva divrei Yatziv, that there's a Messiah from the Magid. That who is Bimei Masu ben Yochanan Kohen? Who is this Yochanan? Yochanan was the Yochanan Kohen Gadol who was Shemesh for 80 years, but he became a tzedaki. And we know that tzedaikim, their sheet against the chachamim was, they prepared the fire on the outside of the Kodesh HaKadosh, and then they brought it in, as opposed to the Prushim who brought it on the inside. Chenveni is oisi Yochanan. Says the Glatstein Rebbe, Hiniach chenveni neiroi mi bachutz. Chenveni, Yochanan was chayiv because he put it outside. But his son Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, you know what the tikkun for Yochanan was? The ner Chanukah that we put on the outside to be Masakin Chemid. That's the Glatstein Rebbe's tshuva. Fine. It's not in the sheet. But be it as it may, there's not one Mishnah in the Kol HaTorah, in the whole Mishnayos, that has a direct halacha about Chanukah, where to put the neiros, when to light the neiros, how to light the neiros, halakha is a mitzvah, madlikin minera, not one halacha. Why is Chanukah omitted from the Mishnah? Okay, it's a famous question. I'm sure we've heard many answers. We're going to say a new answer tonight, why Chanukah is not found in the Mishnah. By the way, There's no Masechta on Chanukah. We all know why is there no Masechta on Chanukah. Even in the Zohar HaKadosh, how many times does the Zohar mention Chanukah? One time in the entire Zohar, he has like an allusion to Chanukah. Not even in the Zohar. Parshas Behaloischa, what we learn on Zois Chanukah, it says, V'zeh masa ha-menorah. This is the Maisa of the Menorah. V'zeh. So we know whenever it says Zeh, that means Rebbe Hashem has to be Moira be'etzba. Hashem has to point. So Rashi says that implies that Neskasha Moshe b'Menorah, Moshe had a kasha. He didn't understand the Menorah. What was so complicated about the Menorah? Moshe had no problems with the Arayin, the Paroiches, the Kruvim, the Kapoires, the Krashim, the Paroiches. The Paroiches is very difficult to weave. There was a very complex, different images on the different side. Moshe had no kashas on any of these. The Shulchan, the Menaki Yosef, the Kesoyosef, everything Moshe got down pat. Comes to the Menorah, Moshe had kashas. Well, what's the big difficulty with the Menorah? That Moshe could not understand the Menorah. Everything else he seemed to understand perfectly. The Gemara Nida, number 6, describes to us the state of the embryo b'mei imai. And the Gemara says, what is a b'ma lama havla doima b'mei imai? So the Gemara says the baby eats from what the mother eats, it drinks from what the mother drinks. And the Gemara says, V'ner dolok al roishai. There's a candle on the head of the child. V'soifa umabit misoifa oilam miyad. The kid is able to see from one end of the world into the next. Uba malach umelamden oisai kol haTorah kula. You got it? You hear two things. There's a candle on the head of the kid, and a malach teaches the kid kol haTorah kula. Says the Gemara, v'kivan sheyatza la'aver oilam. Once the kid is born, ba malach v'satroi al piv. The malach comes, slaps the kid on the mouth, which the Nesivos writes does not mean this. Doesn't mean this, because I don't know about you, I never met anyone that if you punch them in the face, in the mouth, they forget they're learning. Well, what does the mouth have to do with their learning? If it says you punch them in the head, then maybe they have a shot of forgetting, but piv refers to something else. Piv, well, maybe we'll discuss it a different time. But all we have in the Gemara is the malach comes, hits the kid, and the kid forgets kol haTorah kula. In fact, the Satmar Rebbe, Peladik Akasha, we know two pieces of information about the kid. He has a candle on his head, and he knows kol haTorah kula. And then when he's born, the malach comes and makes him forget the whole Torah. What happened to the candle? Well, I guess nobody came along. Now, I don't know about it. Did you ever see a kid born with a candle on his head? So that means somebody took away the candle. So why doesn't the Gemara tell us what happened to the candle? The Gemara says that he has a candle on his head, he sees from one end of the world to the next, and the malach teaches kol haTorah kula, and then when the aftermath, the malach makes the kid forget kol haTorah kula. What happened to the candle? Who put out the candle? Could we still see Meisaifa Olam Miyad Saifai? One thing struck me 2 years ago, Zois Chanukah. The only laning the entire year that we do, that we go right through the stop sign, we go right through the red light, where we're laning, we lane the end of Nasai, we say, Uvavai Moshe, Eloya Moyed, Daber Yitai, Yitai, and then, Daber Hashem Moshe Lemar, Ba'alois Chas Hanerois. Wait a second. You can't stop at the end of Nasai, let the Levi stop at the end of Nasai, and call up the Yisrael from Eidaber Shal Moshe B'Halois. It's the only laning the entire year. They go right through the space, right through the end of the parsha. Go from one. Now, the truth is, we have double parshas. When they're double parshas, they're koveya, that this week it's Vayakel Pekudei. But it's the only laning the whole year that, we're not goyres, the pause in the Torah, the end of the parsha. Why are we violating the rule? Why are we going through this pause? Why are we going through the space? Why are we going into the next parsha? What's the halacha? Your glasses are a little dirty, can't see well. You want to take your talis and you want to clean your glasses. Are you allowed to clean your glasses with your talis? It's a shaila in the poskim. What's the shaila? Is it a bizoyon for the chayfetz of the mitzvah to clean glasses. Some poskim say it's okay. Some say it's not. You're not washing the floor. You're washing your glasses. It's a shaila. You're at a shiur. Yeah, you're at a shiur. You can't hear well, so you want to take a shofar, stick it in your ear, and listen to the shiur with the shofar. Are you allowed to be mishtamish with the dvar mitzvah? No ister to be mishtamish with the dvar mitzvah. And yeah, when it comes to Chanukah, there's a halacha. Asur l'shtamesh la'ira. Why are you now to use the ira? Why can't I learn by the Chanukah lacht? It's not a bizayon. We know the only time you're now to use a chayfetz of a mitzvah is if it's a bizayon for the mitzvah. It's not a bizayon for the mitzvah to learn by the ner menorah. Why is it asur l'hishtamesh la'ira? Another question. Typically, the Yom Tovim for Klal Yisrael, either in the beginning of the month or in the middle of the month. You know, you have Sukkot in the middle of the month, Pesach in the middle of the month, or you have Rosh Hashanah in the beginning of the month. Vasapis, it comes to Chanukah, and it's Chaf Hei Kislev. It's a very odd date. It's a very strange date to have a Yom Tif like almost near the end. You know, I think by Hasidim, the end of the month, they don't get married. Many Hasidim don't get married. Now the truth is, maybe I shouldn't say this. You have to know how to read the Ramah. The Ramah says, V'yesh noyagin. There's a steer in the Ramaz. The Ramah says in Even Hazar, some have a custom not to get married in the end of the month. Okay? Because the moon is waning. In the halachas of the 3 weeks, the Ramah says that the minhag in Klal Yisrael, noyagin, so noyagin not to get married from Shiva Asar B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av. That's minhag Ashkenaz. So actually, by the 3 weeks, the Ramah says yesh noyagin. Yeah? And by getting married at the end of the month, he says nahagu. Nahagu not to get married at the end of the month. So the Hafla asks, why does the Ramah have to say that there's nahagu not to get married, that yesh noyagin not to get married from Shavas B'Tammuz until the end of Tammuz? Anyway, you're not supposed to get married at the end of the month. So Hafla says not true. There's no such thing. You're not supposed to get married at the end of the month. It says nahagu. Nahagu doesn't mean it's a minhag. Nahagu means people do it, but doesn't mean there's any reason not to do it. Says Afla, there's no reason not to do it. People just don't do it. They don't want to do it. V'yesh noyagim is a minhag l'charchilo. You should have a minhag not to get married during the whole 3 weeks. So you have to know, when the Ramah says v'yesh noyagim, that's a minhag l'charchilo. When he says nohagu, that means it's just what people do, but it's not a minhag Yisrael necessarily. So based on that, the Olam HaYeshivas were not makbid on that. They were not makbid on that.
Nohagu means that it's a fact.
No, that's what the Hafla learns. That's how the Hafla learns. That's how Rapam would say it over. Okay, but be it as it may, Chanukah we have on the 25th day of the month. What's the Indian that it's a rather odd time of the year to celebrate a Yom Tov. Okay, so Rabbi said we know how many Neiros are there on Chanukah. You have 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4, plus 5, plus 6, plus 7, plus 8. There are a total of Lamed Vav Neiros, 36 Neiros. What's the significance of 36 Neiros? Comes the Roikach, comes Rabbi Lazar Garmaiza, and he says the soid of 36 Neiros is there's a concept that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the original Ar. That Ar was Mishtamish Ba'olam for 36 hours. 12 hours Friday day, 12 hours Friday night, 12 hours Shabbos day, total of 36 hours, whereupon the Rebbeinu Shalom saw that this Ar was not good to hang around because it's not proper for the Rishon to be nena from this Ar, and the Rebbeinu Shalom took the Ar, and he was goynez the Ar l'tzadikim la'asalava. He put it away. Therefore, on Chanukah, there's a connection between the Chanukah lich that we light on Chanukah, the 36 Neiros, and the 36 hours that the original Ar was mishtamesh in the world until the Rebbeinu Shalom put it away. There's some connection. When we stand by the window and we light 1, and then 2, and then 3, somehow it's bringing out the original light that the Rebbeinu Shalom hid away on those 36 hours of creation. In fact, the Roikeach says, if you look in the Sefer Torah, on the word Vayar Elokim, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ar, and we know the word Ar is the 25th word in the Torah, that on the word Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ar, Vayar Elokim Ar Ki Toiv, on the letter Toiv, on the letter Tes of Toiv, there are 4 tagim on the Tes. There are 4 tagim on that Tes. 4 times Tes is 36, Keneged the Lamed Vav Shoish and Nishtamesh Ha'ar before the Rebbeinu Shalom put it away, and the 36 Neros of Ner Chanukah. Now the truth is, you can look at any Sefer Torah, there are no 4 Tagim on any test. But that's the Messiah, that there are 4 Tagim on the test. There's such a Messiah that the Rishonim bring down, the Bnei Yissaschar brings down, that there are 4 Tagim on the test. These 4 Tagim, Dalid Tagim, times test is 36, corresponding to the 36 hours of the original R and the 36 Neros of Chanukah. In fact, the Bnei Yissaschar says that if the test corresponds to the 36 Neros, what about the Vav and the Beis? Those are the 8 days of Chanukah. So why make it a Vav and a Beis? It should be a Ches, because there are 2 parts of Chanukah. There are the middle 6 days, and then there's the first and the last day. There's the Beis and the Vav. The first and last day of Chanukah are special. The first day, the Arizal says you should be Mechabin for the first till the Yud Gimel Midas Arachamim. And then when you get up to the 8th day, so you have to finish up 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Therefore the Maril brings down a minhag that there are those who don't do malacha on the first and the last day of Chanukah, because there's something special about the beginning of Chanukah and the end of Chanukah. So we have this Messiah that the Rekach brings down. It's Yerushalmi in Brachos, it's a Gemara in Chagiga, that the original light that the Rebbeinu Shalom created was only used in this world for 36 hours, whereupon the Rebbeinu Shalom took the light and he was goynez the light. Now, first let's establish the following principle. What does it mean when something is nignaz? What does it mean when something is nignaz? Maybe one would mistakenly think that nignaz means Rebbeinu Shalom took it and he put it away, he locked it in a box, and it's not accessible, and it has no ramification, and it doesn't do anything anymore, and it's non-existent. So Rav Hutner, whose yard site was 2 days ago, Rav Hutner explains in the Pachad Yitzchak that whenever Chazal use the expression goynez, it does not mean it's locked up in a box and it's gone forever and it has no pa'ula and has no ramification anymore. Goynez means that relative to the way it functioned before it was goynez, it now functions in a more hidden manner, but it still is effective, it still is functioning, and it still has ramifications. For example, the fact the Gemara says the Aroin toward the end of the Bayis Rishon was they were goynez the Aroin. They were goynez the Aroin. The Rambam says you can't have a Kodesh HaKadoshim without an Aroin. You can't have a Beis HaMikdash without an Aroin. It's a Mishkan Ha'edos. So if they're goynez the Aroin, then the Beis HaMikdash is possible. So the Rambam himself writes that when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, he created matmoniyos, akalkalos, underground labyrinths, in which the Aroin was buried. So it still was a Mikdash with an Aroin. It's just now the Aroin was not apparent to a Kohen Gadol who went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but it was still a Beis HaMikdash with an Aroin. In fact, the Yerushalmi says in Shkalim that one time a Kohen was doing an Avodah and he saw that there was a floorboard that was a little misplaced, and he realized the Aroin was underneath. And he didn't have a chance to tell anyone, and he passed away. That means, says Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky writes, they knew exactly where the Aron was, but it was goynez, it was hidden. It was hidden. So the $1 million question is, the Rebbeinu Shalom hid the light. Where did the Rebbeinu Shalom hide the light? Where is the light? Where's the light? Flatbush, 5 towns, Mastama somewhere in Borough Park. Right? Where is the Oragonos? Says the Medrash Tanchuma, look at number 14, the Medrash Tanchuma, Parashas Noach. First of all, says the Medrash that in order to learn Torah Sheba'al Peh, you cannot be successful in learning Torah Sheba'al Peh if you love money and you love pleasure, because to learn Torah Sheba'al Peh, it's a lot of tsar. You have to wake yourself up from your slumber. You have to tire yourself out. And the reward for learning Torah Sheba'al Peh is only in Olam Haba. Says the Medrash, Or Shenivra B'Yom Rishon, the light Hashem created on day 1, Shegonzai HaKadosh Baruch Hu, La'amela Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Rebbeinu Shalom took the light and he hid it away for those who toil in the Torah Sheba'al Peh. So now we know for whom Hashem hid the light, for those who learn the Torah Sheba'al Peh. But where did Hashem put away the light? Where is the light? If you look at number 15, the Eitz Yosef writes on the Medrash, in the name of the Magid, Shamati Oimrim, Shebeirurai, Shegnazai, B'Toirasai, HaKadoisha. Hashem hid the light in the Torah. Through the Torah, a person could see from one end of the world until the next, right? They say about the Baal Shem that he once sent a message to Rav Gershon Kitover. You left Eretz Yisrael? You left Eretz Yisrael? So Gershon said, how do you know, in the Ukraine that I left Eretz Yisrael? He says, I see. I know. I see. Those who are able to access the Torah in the deepest way, they're able to see we find in Chazal that those who learn Torah could see How by learning Torah could you see Because what's in the Torah, the Oraganos, and we know who has a candle on their head, that through that candle they're able to see the baby b'mei imai. So what must that candle be, says the Satmar Rebbe, that's lit on the top of the child's head? That must be the Oragonos. Where'd the kid get the Oragonos from? Because the Malach taught the kid Kol HaTorah Kula. It's not two different things. It's not the Malach teaches the kid Kol HaTorah Kula, and he has a candle resting on his head. No, by the Malach teaching the kid Kol HaTorah Kula, he has that virtual candle on his head with which he's able to see Misayfai and Sci-Fi. So once the Malach comes and makes him forget the Torah, the light goes out automatically. It's unnecessary for the Gemara to mention that the Malach puts out the candle. It's not a separate candle. The child is able to see through his knowledge of Torah. Once the knowledge is lost, so the child is not able to see anymore. Nefesh HaChaim, number 16, Nefesh HaChaim says the same thing. That he quotes in the last couple of words, Mevuar, Bezoyar, Sheha'ar, Nignaz, Va'iraisa. It's Mevuar in the Zoyar that the Oragonos is hidden in the Torah. Chaim Volozhiner wrote a commentary to the Geraz Perish on Zram, the Shnois Eliyahu. Reb Chaim says, look at number 17, Ki Nignaz, Kol Ha'ar, B'Torah. Hachasuma asher biyadenu sham balalo. He mixed it in. The Rebbe Shalom mixed it in. V'gonzai kol hama'oros l'hiskalos l'tzadikim azoichim b'chol dar v'dar. That in every generation, those who access the Torah have access to the Aragonos with which to see from one end of the world into the next. But we're not satisfied. So Hashem hid it in the Torah. We're in the Torah. What part of the Torah? Which books of the Torah? So remember, I had a Rebbe in Mesivta that if you asked a good kasha, the Rebbe would say, Kaftar v'ferach. Kaftar v'ferach. Buttons and flowers. Okay? What in the world does that mean? Buttons and flowers. Those are decorations of the menorah. Why is that used? Says, I don't know what kind of Rebbe. I don't know what kind of Rebbe you had. The Bereshis Rabbah in Parshat Tzaliyah, number 21. Look, it says, Reb Chanina v'Reb Marinos Tarvein Amrin b'Shem Abba Nohirai b'Shah Shahaya Adam Oimer Davar Mesukan Lefnei Rav Tarfain. When somebody said a good svara before Rav Tarfain, Haya Oimer Kaftar v'Ferach. Says the Netziv, such a beautiful language, in number 23 on the bottom line. Siach Rabban Shal Yisrael, the expression, the sprach of the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael, L'lamdeinu ba, he's teaching me something. Why is Rav Tarfain, why is his compliment Kaftar v'Ferach? Says the Netziv, the hashpa of the Torah came through the aegis of the Mishkan. The Mishkan gave Klal Yisrael a shefa of Torah. There are two chalakim of Torah. There's Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh. The shefa of Torah Shebechsav came through the Aron, which had the luchos in it. And the shefa of Pilpul, of Svara, of Yud Gimel Midosh HaTorah Rashes Behem, came through the vehicle of the menorah. Through the decorations of the menorah and the intricacies of the menorah came a hashpa of Torah Shebal Peh. Therefore, if somebody said a good svara, that means they're connecting to the menorah. Rabbi Tarfon said, Kaftar v'Ferach. Chazal say, Haroitze lahashir, if you want to become wealthy, stay in New York, Yatzbin. But why do Jews like Miami? V'haroitze lahachkim, Yadrim, you want to become smart? And that doesn't mean that, by the way. It means when you daven Shema Esrei, you tilt to the south. You tilt to the south. So somebody wants to know, why can't you do both? No. You got to choose, right? Harotza lahachkim yadrim v'simonich menorah shebadaraim. Chachma is in the daraim. Chachma is in the south. Chachma is in the south because the menorah was the hashpa of Chachma. Listen to this. This is one of the most stirring ideas in the whole Torah. Comes the Malbim. I hope it's okay. I could say I have a special family connection to the Malbim. My Zayda's Zayda, my great-great-grandfather, was a Rav in Linschitz in the 1860s when the Malbim was sitting in a Beis Medrash in Linschitz writing the Perush HaMalbim al Torah. He was a Yedid Nefesh with the Malbim. So my Zayda grew up a Yasaim. So all he knew was his grandfather. And his grandfather's best friend was the Malbim. So my grandfather grew up Ki'ilu like the Malbim was his tata. So my grandfather never went a day in his life without he talked about the Malbim. He always writes about the Malbim, always learning the Malbim. Even his initials are Malbim. Mart Chaleb Ben Yechiel Mechal. Okay, that's just personal, you know. It's interesting to me. No, to you, I don't know. But the Malbim wrote a number. By the way, the Briskers say there are three Achronim. They have a koich of a Rishain. Obviously, they say Reb Chaim and the Vilna Gaon, and they say the Malbim. In fact, the Beis Halevi says there's a pasuk in Tehillim that none of the Rishonim explained. The Malbim was able to explain it. It must have been Baruch HaKadosh. Beis Halevi says the Malbim wrote a perush called Eretz Chemda. Besides the Malbim, he wrote Eretz Chemda. He says a davar oyom v'noira by every day of creation. Vayomer Elokim yehi rakia. Vayichen. Vayomer Elokim tache aretz desha. Vayichen. Vayomer Elokim yishutzu amayim. Vayichen. Vayomer Elokim yehi ma'oros. Vayichen. Vayomer Elokim na'asa adam. Vayichen. Vayomer Elokim yehi or. Vayihi or. Why doesn't it say Vayichen? The answer, says the Malbim, is because Vayichen means that it was. But when the Rebbe Shem created the original light, Vayomer Elokim yehi or, it wasn't yehi or. It wasn't Yehichen. It wasn't the light the Rebbe Shem wanted. Hashem had to put it away. So it's Vayomer Elokim yehi or. It wasn't Vayichen, it was Vayihi or. So there's a missing chen. There's a missing chen. Not until Aaron HaKohen comes along and he lights the menorah was he mashlim the kain of Brias Ha'olam. That's why the pasuk says, number 24, Vayas kain Aaron. Aaron finished the kain. He was like V'es vel ben abak asher osa asher tikein, Rashi says. Vayas kain Aaron was masakin the kain. Oh, says the Malbim and the Torah now we have an insight into the most inexplicable Rashi in Kol HaTorah Kula. How much ink has been spilled, as they say, to explain this Rashi. Rashi says on the words Vayas Kain Aaron, Lahagid Shivchai Shal Aaron Shaloi Shina. To tell me the praise of Aaron that he didn't change. Right? Everyone talks about that. Everyone asks, what's the great praise of Aaron that he didn't change? Hashem said light the menorah, and what's the big shvach? That Aaron lit the menorah and he didn't go bowling? What do you mean? Vayas Kain Aaron, he listened to Hashem. Lahagid Shivchai Shal Aaron. Says the Malbim, the Oimek Kavanos is like this. Lahagid Shivchai Shal Aaron, that he was able to make it. Then when the Ribbon Shalom said, Vayomer Elokim yehi or, he was able to make it Vayihi Chen, that the Ribbon Shalom didn't have to make a change. He didn't have to switch it like it was Vayomer Elokim yehi Vayihi or. Aaron made it Vayihi Chen. So I want to suggest, how do we end? What's the last words of the Torah that we lay in on Chanukah and Zayis Chanukah? Kain asa menorah. Kain asa menorah. Aaron made the menorah. Kain vayas Kain Aaron. So somehow, by Aaron HaKohen lighting the menorah, he was not only able to fulfill the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, he was able to make it that when the Rebbe Shem created that original light, that he had to hide, Aaron said, no, not hiding it anymore. We're going to be bringing it out through the lighting of the menorah. We're bringing out the original light of creation. Marv Rabbi said, but where in the Torah is the light? Because it comes out very good. Because if by lighting the menorah we're bringing out the Or HaGanos, and we know the Aragonos is in the Torah, and the menorah represents the Torah, and the menorah represents Torah Shabbal Peh specifically, because the Arayin is the Torah Shabbal and the menorah is Torah Shabbal Peh. Where in the Torah is the Aragonos? So we have a Mesorah. How many Masechtas are there in Shas? The Ber Heitev brings down Lulav, Lamed Vav, Lamed Vez. Take the 36 Masechtas and put it on your heart. Shas Teshuvas Maria Asad Siman Aleph. There are 36 Masechtas. He asks, what about 37? He says maybe Tamid was not Masader. Rav Ashi was not Masader, the Gemara on Masechta Tamid, so maybe we don't count Masechta Tamid. But the Mesorah is, there are Lamed Vav Masechtas. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, and he says, I bring this down from 3 Mekoros Ne'amanim. From the Roikeach. How did the Roikeach know that the reason we light Lamed Vav Neiros on Chanukah is connected to Lamed Vav Sha'os, that the original Or was Mishtamish V'Riyas Ha'olam? Says the Bnei Yissaschar, the Roikeach had Gilu Elio Anavi. Who else says this idea? The Maharal, who knew the Sefer Yetzirah. Who else says this idea? Rav Pinchas Karatzer. Pinchas Karatzer, Baal Ruach HaKodesh. They all learn that the Lamed Vav Neiros of Chanukah correspond to the 36 hours that the original light was Mishtamish. And where is the light now? In the 36 Masechtas of Shas. So the 36 Neiros of Chanukah, which are Meir, the original Aragonos, since the menorah is the light of the Torah Shabbal Peh, Haroitza Lahachkim Yadrim. Since the menorah is the Chachma Torah Shabbal Peh, Kaftar V'Ferach, by us lighting the menorah, we're bringing out the Or HaTorah and we're recreating the world, so to speak. The world was originally created. When was the light created? What day of the year did Hashem say, Bayom Elikim Yihiyar? Chaf Hei Elul. That was the date of the creation of the light. Chaf Hei Elul, says the Shalach HaKadosh. And we know for something to take substance, it takes 3 months. Hukar ha'ubar, after 3 months. Dinei Truma, something is considered Nizgadel in the previous year if it grew through 3 months. 3 months into the year, the Or HaGanos has some substance and comes out into the world through the Hadlaka of the Menorah, and the 36 hours that the light was Mishtamesh, B'Briyas Ha'olam, was now put in the 36 Masechtas, and through the Hashpa of the Menorah in our house, which, by the way, is a replica of the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, which is one of the reasons the Ran says Asur L'Hishtamesh L'Oira. The reason it's also Hishtamesh L'Oira is because the menorah that we light is Me'ain, the menorah in the Mikdash, where there is an Isser Me'ilan. Therefore, this is the concept of the menorah. The menorah brings out the original light of creation that was hidden in the Lamed Vav Masechtas and now is being nizgala through the mitzvah of Halakas Menorah. So perhaps we could suggest a very big chiddush. We ask, why is there no Masechta for Chanukah? Why is there no Masechta for Chanukah? Why is there no Masechta for Chanukah? How could you confine Chanukah into one Masechta? Chanukah is Lamed Vav Masechtas. Chanukah is the entirety of Kol HaTorah Kula. Chanukah is all 36 Ma'oros of Chayenu, all the 36 luminaries of Kol HaTorah Kula is Chanukah. You're going to squeeze Chanukah into one Masechta? You can't confine. Chanukah is overriding. Chanukah is overarching. Look at number 34. It's secret Maramakim. We say, "V'ulai mibnei zeh ein Masechta miyuchad leChanukah de Chanukah v'haneiros." Koilel kol Lamed Vav Masechtos. Chanukah is koilel the entirety of the Torah Shabbal Peh. How do you squeeze Chanukah into one Masech? Chanukah is the entirety of the Torah. It's the entirety of the Aragonos. Says Bnei Yissaschar, why is Chanukah not written in the Torah? Meaning, why is there no? Why the Gemara says Chanukah is le'nitein lichtayv? You know why Chanukah is le'nitein lichtayv? What are we doing on Chanukah? We're going back to Chaf Hei Elul. And we're going back to the time before the light of the Torah, before the light of creation was put in the Torah, before it was put into the ICIs, before it was hidden in the Torah, going back to, we're predating the light before it was put in the ICIs HaTorah. So how could Chanukah now be nichtav? It can't be nichtav. The whole point of Chanukah is to go back to the time that the Or was mayor before it was nignaz v'oisiyos haTorah. That is the reason, says Ibn Yisasar, why Chanukah is le'nitein lichtav. Do you want to see it inside? In number 35, in Ois Tezvav. V'oi tavin lefizeh. Le'nitein lichtav haneis hazeh v'oisiyos. Ki hu roimez l'Or harishon. Koidem shenichtav v'oisiyos. This, says Ibn Yissaschar, is the overview and the position of three great luminaries. The Roikeach, he says, Rabbi Elazar Migar Maiza, who had Gilui Eliyahu, the Maharal, who also had access to Sefer Yetzirah, and Rav Pinchas Karatzer, who was about Ruach HaKodesh. They all learn that the concept of the menorah is to be meir, the aragonos that was nignaz in the Torah, that through the light of the menorah we're able to bring out the light that was hidden, that which Rebbe Shalom said, Vayomer Elokim Yihiyar, and it was Vayihiyar, we replicate Aaron HaKoyin, we make it Vayihichein, Kein Asa Asa Menorah. So what did Moshe get about the menorah? What was Moshe's problem with the menorah? What's so difficult? Says the Goyin, if you look at number 39, so I have a diagram for you, it's Suras HaMenorah before. The Goyin points out on the Rashi, we know the menorah had 7 kanim, yeah? How many geviyim did the menorah have? How many goblets did the menorah have? Well, it had 3 on each branch, so it's 3 basically times 7. And then there was another goblet a little bit above the base of the menorah, that's 22. So 22 geviyim. Keep that in mind. How many kaftoirim, how many knobs? Well, you had 1 on each kaneh, toward the top. And then another 4 on the main branch of the menorah. So there are 11 kaftarim. How many prachim? So basically you had 1 flower on each kaneh, toward the top. All the way on the top is 1 flower. And then the branch of the menorah, the main branch of the menorah, had another 2. So basically like this. You have 7 kanim. You have 22 geviyim, 22 goblets. You have 11 kaftarim, 11 knobs. And you have 9 prachim, 9 flowers. And we learned that each design has a hashpah of Torah. The influence of Torah comes through the intricacies of the menorah. If you count up, says the Gaon, the 7 kanim, the 22 geviyim, 29, the 11 kaftorim, 40, the 9 prachim, 49. How many sharei bina are there? Nun sharei bina nivru ba'olam, v'kulam nitnu l'Moshe chasar achas. There are 50 sharei bina, and they're all given to Moshe except for 1. Shenemar v'atechasreyu meyat me'alekim, says Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Chaf Aleph. So Moshe Rabbeinu had 49 sharei bina. So Moshe Rabbeinu basically understood the menorah. But the menorah has 49 designs. But what about the menorah atzmai? The menorah itself. The menorah itself is the Shar Nun. And the Shar Nun, Moshe didn't understand. He didn't know the Shar Nun. So Niskasha Moshe b'menorah. The reason why the Moshe was Niskasha b'menorah is because the menorah has 49 details. The 49 details are the Memte Sharei Bina. And the menorah itself is the Shar Nun. Moshe didn't know the Shar Nun, so he didn't understand the menorah. So then it comes out that when Hashem said, V'zeh Maisa HaMenorah, what was Rebbe Shalom teaching Moshe? Shar Nun. We have to say that. Did Moshe know the Shar Nun? There are many Makoros that Moshe had access to the Shar Nun at different times in his life. For example, when he went up to Har Sinai, it says, Vayal Moshe, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, as Kol. The reason it's Kol is 50. And then after the Chedo Egel, Hashem tells Moshe, Lech Reid, go down from 50. And ultimately Moshe got the Shar Nun back, because it says, Vayal Moshe Me'arvois Moyav. Moyav is 49. El Har Navoi Nun Boy. Moshe got the 50th ultimately. And even his Talmud Yehoshua was Bin Nun. He was Mizboinin on the Shar Nun that he learned from Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe had access to the Shar Nun. When did the Rebbe Shalom teach Moshe the Shar Nun? L'chayra, when he said the words, V'zeh ma'isa ha-menorah, Hashem was saying, I know you don't understand the menorah, I know you're miskash of the menorah, that's because you don't know the Sha'ar Nun. Let me teach you now the Sha'ar Nun. What's the Sha'ar Nun? The Sha'ar Nun is the Sodos HaTorah. The Sha'ar Nun are the secrets of Torah. So when Hashem taught Moshe the menorah, He's teaching him the Sodos HaTorah. When did Hashem teach Moshe the menorah? Doesn't say. Let's try to figure it out. When you read the parsha of Nasai, Vayihi HaMakriv Bayem HaRishon, right? The Nasi of Shevet Yehuda, Bayem HaRishon. Bayem HaRishon of what? What day was the Nasi of Yehuda Makriv his carbon? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And then Aaron had Chalishas Hadas. So Hashem said, don't have Chalishas Hadas. Shalcha Gedolim Mishalahem, you light the menorah. So it's not going to work out, because this is all happening in Nisan. The Shevet Yehuda was Makriv on the first day of Nisan, the next Shevet on the second day of Nisan. It's not going to work out. But wait a second. The Yalkut Shimoni says in Malachim that the Mishkan was not finished Rosh Chodesh Nisan. When was the Mishkan finished? Chanukah. But Hashem said, you know what? I want to pay back Nisan because Yitzchak was born in Nisan. So even though the Mishkan is finished, we're going to wait until Rosh Chodesh Nisan to start being Makriv Karbanos. So I ask you a question. When do you think the Rebbeinu Shalom told the Nesiim about the Karbanos they're going to bring? He told them Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Mistama, he told them when the Mishkan was finished on Chanukah. You're going to be Makriv Karbanos. Oh, but you're not going to bring it now. We're going to wait until Nisan. So l'chayra on Chanukah, Hashem told the Nesiim, you're going to be Makriv Karbanos. And if Hashem told the Nesiim, probably Aaron knew, and Aaron had Chalishas Hadas. And how is Hashem menachem Aaron? He said, Shalcha Gedolim Mishalahem. And Moshe was Naskasha b'Menorah. And Hashem told him, V'zeh ma'isa ha-menorah. So when did Hashem tell Moshe, V'zeh ma'isa ha-menorah? Mistama on Chanukah, that would make a lot of sense. Wouldn't it be logical that when would the Rebbeinu Shalom teach Moshe Rabbeinu about the menorah? On Chanukah. So when did Hashem teach Moshe the Sha'ar Nun? Chanukah. So maybe, Zachinu la'ar gadol, that when the Chassam Sofer says that we should be mechazik ourselves, believe in Torah and Chanukah, because the Sodos HaTorah were given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah. Mehechi teisi, say it. Yeah? How does the Chassam Sofer know that the Sodos HaTorah were given to Moshe on Chanukah? So Moshe didn't understand the menorah. Why? Because the menorah itself is the Sha'ar Nun. Moshe didn't know the Sha'ar Nun. But Hashem explained it to him. He said, V'zeh ma'asa menorah. That means Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu the Sha'ar Nun. And the Sha'ar Nun are the secrets of the Torah. So even though the Nesiim were Makriv their Karbanos, Rosh Chodesh Nisan and on, but the Yalkut Shimoni says that really the Mishkan was finished on Chanukah. It's just, Hashem said, let's wait till Nisan, the month that Yitzchak was born. But really, the Mishkan was finished Chanukah. Mistam, the Rebbeinu Shalom told the Nesiim about the Karbanos that are going to bring then on Chanukah. And then Aaron had Chalishas Hadas on Chanukah. And Hashem told Aaron, don't worry, you have the lighting of the menorah. And he told it to him on Chanukah. And Moshe says, I don't understand the menorah. So Hashem said, let me explain it to you. V'zeh ma'isa menorah. When was V'zeh ma'isa menorah? Mistam on Chanukah. That means on the Hashem taught Moshe menorah on Chanukah, which was the Sha'ar Nun. That's Pshat Nechsam Sofer. That the Sodos HaTorah were Nimsara l'Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah, because very, very likely that's when the Rebbeinu Shalom said, V'zeh ma'isa menorah. When did Hashem teach Moshe Rabbeinu the Sodos HaTorah? Through the menorah on Chanukah. Right? So the Nes had to be through the Kedah. Yeah. So I realized last year we're laning the longest laning of the year. So it's Chanukah. This Nasi, that Nasi, this Nasi. So I just read an interesting thing. When Moshe Wolfson has different times, he makes cheshbonos with the number of psukim. So I say, you know what? Let me count the psukim that we lane on Zos Chanukah. How many psukim do we lane on Zos Chanukah? 50 psukim on Zos Chanukah. 50 psukim on Zos Chanukah. You count the last 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, the last 5 Nesiim, and then into Behaloischa, 50 psukim. That's when did Rebbe Shem tell Moshe v'zeh ma'aseh menorah? Mastama, the end of Chanukah. By the end of Chanukah, Moshe chapped the ma'aseh menorah. He chapped the Shar Nun, maybe the remezes. That's why we lay 50 psukim as Chanukah. So it's maybe like this. The rest of the year, we can't go past our limits. We're limited. When we get to the stop sign, when we get to the red light, we stop, we know our place, we know our limitations. There's one day a year that we're unlimited, there's no cap, we could go lamala, nothing holds us down. Zois Chanukah, we get to the end of the haloischa, but we keep on going. We go right through the stop sign, right through the red light. We go right into the next part of the Zois Chanukah. We're zoicha to the highest madrega of Torah, which even though, Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai 3 sets of 40 days, but he never was zoicha to the Shar Nun until he said, Rabbi Shem, I don't understand. Niskasha Moshe b'Menorah, Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu, v'zeh ma'aseh menorah, and Chanukah then encompasses all 36 Masechtais, which encompasses the entirety of the Ar HaGanah. So we should be zoicha to tap into that great Ar, the Ar of Chanukah, the Ar of Torah, and it's a zman that our neshama could soar lamala malim v'kodesh ve'in maridin, the one time a year that the Kriyas HaTorah has no limitations. We zoicha to tremendous siyata d'shmaya, and ultimately Chanukah then is, as Rabbeinu Bechai says in the Kana Kamach, it's a Chanukah, it's an inauguration of the La'asad Lavai, of the third Beis HaMikdash. Because as the Zohar says in the beginning of Parshas Nasai, Uveginda Asidin Yisrael Mita Meilane Dechaye Iu Hazar HaKadosh, the Zohar says La'asad Lavai, when Klal Yisrael tastes from the Soidos HaTorah, Yibkun Min Galusa Barachame, the Zohar says. So maybe Chanukah is a inauguration of the La'asad Lavai, of the Shar Nun, that we have a little bit of a flavor for. We should be zoicha to Gula Shleima v'Yaskal Tzedek Meher V'Yameinu Amen. Shkayach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.